This title is narrated with virtual voice, computer-generated narration for audiobooks. Rock by T.J. Quinn. Trixie stopped running when she reached the porch of her family's decrepit house. It was raining hard and she was soaked to the bones. The storm had surprised her on her way home from work, and though she'd wanted to wait for it to stop, she hadn't. The sun had disappeared from the horizon a while ago, and traveling the ruinous streets of her small town after dark was a huge mistake. The dark nights gave shelter to all kinds of criminals. She sighed and squeezed the excess water from her dark, curly hair, wishing she didn't have to go in and face her father. She knew her news wouldn't be well received by her family. The front door opened, and Father stepped out. "What are you doing here in the dark?" he asked, with his usual gruff tone. "Hi, Dad. I just got here," she answered with a quivering smile. "What took you so long?" She sighed, knowing there was no use in prolonging the agony. "My boss called me to his office when I finished my shift," she explained. Despite the surrounding darkness, she noticed the deep frown on her father's forehead. "What did you do?" It was so typical of him to assume she had done something wrong, she didn't even argue with his assumption. "Nothing. The factory was forced to reduce its staff again, and I was in the group they laid off," she explained. Until today, she'd been the only member of her family with a formal, stable job. Her mother had been fired a few months back, and now with her also out of a job, things would become even harder than they already were. "I told you to put all your energies into keeping this job, Trixie. If you had shown that you worked harder than anybody else, they wouldn't have let you go," he ranted, slamming his fist against the palm of his hand, exhibiting all his fury and frustration. "That's not fair, Dad. I've been working extra hours ever since Mom lost her job, sometimes even with no extra pay, and you know it," she protested. "They can't afford all their employees, and if things continue this way, I wouldn't be surprised if the factory was closed within a couple of months." "What's going on here?" her mother's voice interrupted them. She was leaning against the doorframe, her fragile silhouette barely visible in the dim light coming from the inside. "She got fired," her father ranted. Her mother sighed. "How many did they lay off this time?" she asked with a sad tone, as she wrapped her shawl tighter around her. The cold, wet breeze that slashed every corner of the porch was more than what she could take. 50, Trixie replied, crossing the porch towards her. "Let's go inside. It's too cold for you out here." "You're soaked," she stated when she was able to take a good look at Trixie. She gave her a faint smile. "Yes, when I left home I wasn't expecting this much rain," she admitted. They all entered the house. "How much did they pay you?" her father asked her, as her mother handed her a clean towel. She told him the modest amount while she dried herself as best as she could. He pursed his lips for a few moments, controlling his temper. Samuel Ferguson had been a wonderful, loving man until the wars. He wasn't called to fight in the first years since he was too old, but near the end, the government had forcibly recruited every person they could lay their hands on. Her father had been one of those. The man that came back from the war was a very different one. Cold, distant, grumpy, and with more wounds than those in plain sight. Her mother and she had done all they could to get his health back, but things had changed forever. She hated the fact her siblings were too young to remember him from before the war. He hadn't been able to find a job to provide for his family, and she was sure that was one of the things that had bothered him more. He did everything he could to get credits, but it was never enough. Mom had been working at the factory back then, and a year later, Trixie had joined her. Things had been a lot easier for a few years, but then her mother got sick, and she was asked to leave work. People couldn't afford to be sick anymore, and no one wanted to work with her. Trixie was the only one providing.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.